You fly in and you think, oh my God, these are the gates of hell. I mean, you see the Pentagon, of all things, burning. Couldn't even see that there was any remnants of a plane, and the southwest wall was completely on fire. But the gates of hell take you to some pretty interesting places.
Top leaders, meaningful conversation, actionable advice, bulldoze complacency, ignite inspiration, create impact. Produced by Southwestern family of companies. This is the Action Catalyst.
Are you interested in advertising with the Action Catalyst? Our listeners could be hearing about your brand right here, right now. For details, shoot us an email at info@theactioncatalyst.com.
Today's guest is Dr. Thom Mayer, an author and keynote speaker who's been a leader in times of crisis for over 25 years. He's the medical director for the NFL Players Association, served as a command physician at the Pentagon on 9/11, led a mobile emergency team in Ukraine, and has authored the new book, Leadership is Worthless, but Leading is Priceless. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Thom Mayer.
Thom, great to meet you.
Good to see you.
I actually want to know a little bit of your backstory. Like, where did you grow up, and then how did you end up where you are now?
Well, I grew up in small town Indiana, Midwestern, classic Midwestern way to be raised. One of those factory towns that fed General Motors, 70 miles northeast of Indianapolis. And football player. A lot of people play football in order to go to college. I went to college in order to continue playing football, and dreams of playing in the NFL. And aside from, I did play in college, was an all-conference linebacker. And, the old saying is, the longer ago we played, the better we were. Did have a chance. I'd broken my leg, or I didn't break it. Somebody broke it for me in my junior year, a pretty bad fracture. So I couldn't play my senior year. But I was invited to training camps with the Vikings and the Bears. And so thought, hey, let's give this a shot. And discovered that, what did they tell me? They said, aside from my side speed, strength, and talent, they said I had no talent. Other than that, I would have been a perfect linebacker in the NFL. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, decided to go to. I was in at Duke's medical school, and I thought, no matter how nasty the professors at Duke were, they couldn't be any worse than the guys trying to take my head off with the Vikings and the Bears. So, became an emergency physician. I trained in surgery at Salt Lake City, and we worked a deal out so that the surgical residents covered the park doctor role at Yellowstone National Park.
Wow.
And we've been going back ever since. So 25 years ago, we bit the bullet and bought a place and have enjoyed it ever since. It's still a small town atmosphere. A lot more people have moved in from other places, but we love it.
How did it's a big reevaluation, right? When you switch gears from thinking, I'm going to be a professional athlete, to you obviously had another trajectory in mind to even be considering Duke Medical.
Well, I was actually a theology major when I was in college, and it wasn't that I was particularly cerebral or reflective. It was because you didn't have to take tests. You just wrote papers. At the end of my sophomore year, my two professors, my theology professor and a biology professor, his name was Dr. Prey, you can't make that stuff up, said, have you ever thought about going into medicine instead of being a theology professor? After Duke, I was very clear I wanted to go west. I decided I was either going to go to Colorado or Utah. So I ranked Salt Lake #1 and loved it. Met my wife, Maureen, there. She was a newborn ICU flight nurse. I was a pediatric trauma fellow. Just a magical series of serendipitous circumstances.
And then how did you decide to re-engage with the NFL, or how did they decide to re-engage with you?
People ask me all the time, how do I build my resume to get a job like yours as the medical director of the NFL Players Association? And my answer is, I became the medical director on August 1st, 2001. Corey Stringer, a tackle for the Vikings, died inexplicably of heat stroke. And I got a phone call. The phone call was from Gene Upshaw, then the executive director of the NFLPA. And he called me not because he had done a resume search, but he called me because we were best friends. And we were best friends because his youngest and my youngest were best friends. Our families had had countless dinners. We coached t-ball together. We coached football together. And so he called me because he knew me and he trusted me. So I always tell people, don't build resumes, build relationships. And I think that's the key, particularly as we move forward. And so I've been doing that for the last 23 plus years. And it's been an honor and a privilege to be a part of guiding the health and safety of our 2,500 players per year.
But it's a huge responsibility. And what are just one or two challenges that you ran into?
Sure. When our boys were younger, I used to take them to school every day I was in town. When I dropped them off, I always said precisely the same thing. One more step in the journey of discovering where your deep joy intersects the world's deep needs. I swear I said this to them. You have to start with your deep joy, not the world's deep needs. The world's deep needs are infinite, unfathomable. There's no bottom to that well. But if you start with your deep joy, with a passion that drives you, why you do what you do. And that has been a constant in the job because, Lord Acton said, as you know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. NFL was then in 2001, the most powerful sports organization in their business in the world. And keeping in mind that the deep joy of representing the health and safety needs of our 2,500 player patients. That's not the same interests as the NFL, which represents the interest of 32 billionaires who are the owners of the clubs. And so, you just have to be willing to stay constant to that. It was true in the concussion crisis when we recognized there was a problem that had to be fixed. We, the NFLPA, Sean Sanseveri, our attorney at the time, and I wrote the original concussion protocols, and there was significant pushback from the NFL, different commissioner and different medical director and chair of the what was then called the MTBI committee. We stayed constant to that, and now we're at a place where the league takes great pride in calling them the NFL concussion protocols. That's great, as long as it's for the good of my player patients, but having the courage, the integrity to stand up and say, no, we are going to have guidelines, and these are the scientific protocols that are our best knowledge at this time.
This leads us to actually something you write about, which is sucking down, but instead of sucking up.
The book, as you know, is kind of a litany, very brief, 176 pages of contrarian types of statements, starting with the title, Leadership is Worthless, but Leading is Priceless. What I learned at 9/11, the NFL, and Ukraine. When I was called to the Pentagon on 9/11, I was a command physician at the Pentagon. And I got there. First of all, you fly in and you think, oh my God, these are the gates of hell. I mean, you see the Pentagon, of all things, burning. Couldn't even see that there was any remnants of a plane, and the southwest wall was completely on fire. But the gates of hell take you to some pretty interesting places. And so what I learned was that, first of all, it was a civilian operation. I was the medical director of the local EMS agency and the chairman of the emergency department. But I had 32 generals standing behind me, facing the Pentagon, willing to help in any way. Good men, good women who were there to help me any way they could. But I realized I'm not going to get anywhere by sucking up to these generals. I have to suck down to the people actually doing the work, to the structural engineers, to the Army Corps of Engineers, to the paramedics, to the firefighters, to the suppressant folks, to the FBI evidence recovery team, in order to secure that building so they could safely get into the building to help rescue those who were in there or recover those who had not made it through the horrific crash. And I think that's true in all of our lives. We kind of suck up. I always say the boss is someone who thinks that he's the most important person in the room, whereas the leader knows that her job is to make sure that everyone else feels that they're the most important person in the room. No need to suck up. We need to suck down and discover the answers within us.
Yeah. It is hard, right? You step into a leadership role at times if you are the leader and you have people reporting and sometimes they're sucking up to you. But when you reframe and say, it really is about, hey, I'm not here to be the most important person. I'm here to serve the people that pay my salary, really, that actually put me in this position to begin with.
Yeah. Shortly after I first started my job, I had a very difficult issue with the NFL, and I laid the issue out. And I knew that I can't just say, hey, boss, solve this problem for me. I had to come in with solutions. So I had 3 solutions, and I laid out the solutions and said, here they are. 1, 2, 3. I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, he thought for a second, and he looked at me and he said, just go be Thom Mayer. That's why you are Thom Mayer. That's why I hired Thom Mayer. I realized what he was saying is, I trust you, trust yourself to be able to make the right decision, and I'll support you all the way. The leader we're looking for, the leader you're looking for is you. You are the one.
I feel that you operate probably at a very highly autonomous level when you're taking on these roles. And I mean, not in the way that you don't work with a team, but it's the position you're often put in is, here's the football. You got to figure out how to get it the rest of the way down the finish line. That ends up being a big strength of yours. And I feel like you have very high risk tolerance.
Well, that's true. Definitely. I always talk about innovation at the speed of not genius, intelligence, creativity, but of trust. Because if people don't trust you, they're not going to step outside the lines and try something that might fail. And we have to make failure our fuel. We have to understand that if you're not failing, you're not innovating. You're only adopting best practices, adopting what has already been identified, maybe as the next phase, but it's something that's clearly there. We want people to be able to think really completely outside the box. Most of the time when the boss says, think outside the box, they don't mean that. They mean think inside my box, the way I'm thinking. Guess what I'm thinking? So that's like sucking up. So the answers are not in, they're not in the C-suite. They're in the we suite. The people who do the work, the team of people who do the work in the trenches on a daily basis. And that's where innovation should come from.
The challenge in leadership is getting honest feedback from that we suite that you have. Do you have any thoughts or tips or like personal anecdotes on how you created and evolved a culture where people would tell you sometimes what you didn't want to hear and felt okay doing that?
Well, first of all, I always hired people not only who were better than me, but were much better than me. People would say, what's it like working for you? And the answer is, I have zero idea because no one's ever worked for me. They worked with me. I started almost every statement that I made to my folks, my team, by saying 2 things. One is, I need your help, instead of you've got a problem. Starting with, I need your help. I mean, even if the person you're working with is a difficult person, egocentric, whatever it might be, locked into the boss mentality instead of the leader mentality. When you say, I need your help, most people are going to say, okay, I'm going to try to help you. And 2 is, I like saying, what would have to be true? My point being, what would have to be true in order for us as a team to be able to deliver what it is you've just told me is something, a desired state we need. Here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. What would have to be true in order to get there? There's a difference. There's a fundamental paradox between a team of experts, a very smart, talented group of people. And that's not the same as an expert team, people who work seamlessly across boundaries, who understand what the goal is, the ability to trust each other to come up with ideas. The Kansas City Chiefs, famously are a very innovative team. Well, that starts at the top with Andy Reid, who sits down with his entire staff, his entire team on the whiteboard and looks at ideas about different plays that they could run. How could we exploit in this situation, this down and distance? They're going to be in cover 1, they're going to be in cover 3. That's an expert team, a group of people saying, let's take creative chemistry.
I don't know what you think of when you think of the antithesis of a lot of these principles, but it might help us move into this other part of your life. I read all these anecdotes and news articles about Russia and Putin's leadership in this whole affair with Ukraine. And it seems almost completely counter to everything we talk about. I mean, you get the sense that the generals pander to Putin and tell him what he wants to hear instead of what he doesn't, which might be the reality on the ground. When you got a phone call to go help Ukraine at the start of this war, what went through your mind? Were you concerned? How did you make this decision to?
That's a great question. First of all, I didn't get a phone call. I made a phone call.
Wow.
I picked up I saw what was happening. I thought, I've been very fortunate, as you know, to have led in some of the most prominent crises of our generation. It's an honor to serve others in the course of that and to have been asked to have done so. But to me, I thought this is an injustice that can't stand. I'm an emergency physician, so I'm uniquely trained and have a mentality. We have this weird thing of, explosions, fire, gunfire. We run into that, not away from it. We're just not normal. And so I made phone calls, connected with Team Rubicon, a group of former Marines. And so literally within 3 weeks of the invasion, we were there, boots on the ground in Ukraine, in order to take care of patients. So having been at the tip of that spear, exposed to air raids literally every day and every night, I saw the results. People blown out of their homes, blown out of their apartments in the middle of the night, having to get on a train and go 900 miles west and hope someone would be there to take care of them. But you see, it's hard not to think about what kind of mentality results in men doing that. I think your point is extremely well taken. That authoritarian way of dealing with things does not, in my opinion, have the right results.
No. But, and not to be too contrarian, but I also think, like, in times of crisis, I mean, you're taking Team Rubicon over there, and I imagine it's all hands on deck, a pretty intense experience. And there's got to be some motivation sometimes to be a little authoritarian, because there's the speed element that if you are the one making all the decisions, you can make them so much quicker, right?
How does a team operate as an expert team? Certainly you recruit smart people, but, Bill Belichick said talent sets the floor of a team, but character sets the ceiling of a team. And I think that's true in any team. So, our group came together and bonded. I mean, serious badasses. And that's the highest compliment I can give somebody in an emergency situation. You quickly develop those bonds of trust. You talk about team, how are we going to react in this situation? I can tell you, when I was dealing with those patients, they're right there working with me. And I almost never had to ask them to do anything. It's like in the midst of an emergency resuscitation, I put my hand out when the nurse puts a chest tube in, because she knows what I'm thinking. And the same thing occurred there. So, from great teamwork comes great preparation, great trust, a great sense of the ability of people to work across boundaries. You develop that very quickly. And I think the more we understand that the work begins within, but it turns very quickly towards teamwork.
It's almost like that expression, leadership is assumed before it's assigned, right?
Yeah, wherever we're leading, whether we're leading our family, our kids, whether we're leading a large organization, we have to learn to tell the story of the people we serve. Tell a story about the people that you represent. In too many organizations, too many teams are so bogged down in statistics and data, instead of telling the story of the people that we serve. Mark Twain was very good at this, as most things, when he said, if you want to rise to the meteoric heights of literary greatness, don't write about man, write about a man. Tell the story of the person who's doing it.
Curiosity has had to have played a role in your life, because you're well-read and well-studied. How much importance do you put on curiosity and being a person that asks questions?
Yeah, obviously, I think failure has to be our fuel, but driving failure is curiosity. I wonder why. Why not? Why did we do it this way, and why not do it a different way? Why are we doing it this way? We hear that all the time. And the most common answer to that, because we've always done it that way. Because we've always done it that way, that doesn't show curiosity. That doesn't show, hey, why couldn't it be done another way? So the question, why should be, it adds value to the people we serve. But the bigger question is, why not? Why couldn't we do it another way? Because I ask people to think about leading in a radically different way, to act on those thoughts within a week. Because if the people who listen to this don't, in some small way, do something differently, if they don't act on it within a week, they're not going to act. And the third is to innovate. Think, act, and innovate. And to innovate takes that curiosity to say, why couldn't it have been done another way? Why couldn't the play that we drew up, why couldn't that have been done in a different way? Why the strategic plan that we laid out, how did it fail? To what extent did it fail? Sure, it's nice to have stats to show, data to show, the delta between what we aspired to and that which we achieved. But again, that human story that's behind that. So to me, it's read to lead, read to lead, read the lives of great men, great women, those who've been through it. I just got back from Normandy. I had the great privilege working with Donnie Edwards, a former NFL player, Best Defense Foundation. We took 60 World War II veterans back to the Normandy beaches.
Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. Cold chills just talking about it, listening to those men, what they went through, how they faced it. You can't do better than to see the people who've been through it before and hear their experiences, read their lives. How did they make decisions? What guided them? What went right? What went wrong? It's just that curiosity, as you so correctly say, is the only thing that we can do to fuel our failure, to understand how did we fail.
Failure. You talk about it as a lesson and a learning experience. And I don't know if you've got a good story for this, but sometimes we learn our lessons in life, not because we did it right, because we did it wrong and learn from it. What's a personal example where either you didn't follow your own advice and it cost you something?
Anytime I put myself in front of those I serve, I feel like, I'm too old to be making that mistake. I made that mistake so many times and I just made it over again. And whenever I've, answered a reporter, given a talk, been in a meeting, and I've let my ego get in the way, as opposed to thinking first, last, and always and in between about the people I serve, then I've regretted it. I can give you an example of what I said once. And there was a shooting at the CIA, and I was the chairman of the emergency department at the time. And I tell this story with permission of the patient and his family. This guy named Nick Starr worked at the CIA, waiting to turn in, was shot at close range with a AK-47. And he came into our trauma center, flown in by my police paramedics that are the police helicopter unit, got 28 units of O-negative blood. For some reason, they determined that I was the only person that was going to talk to the press. This was a national story. So I walk outside the emergency department. Reporters are all there. And as you know, often you can hear the question go into their earpiece slightly before they ask the question. So they're peppering me with questions and Dr. Mayer, everybody was interested in donating blood to help because they knew he'd had so much blood. They said, patient had 28 units of O-negative blood. What blood type is he? And before I could think, I said, I don't know what he was before, but he's O-negative now. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. And I thought, well, this has been a good job. I'll pack up the office. Got a phone call from the chief of police. And I thought, well, this is it, And he said, Doc, I just want to tell you that's the funniest thing I've ever heard a real human being say. So, you just trust your heart, as I said earlier. Keep the patient in front, the people we serve in front, the team, and yourself way, way back. C.S. Lewis, as you know, said, humility consists not of thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Don't be so humble. You're not that great. Good advice to keep in mind.
That's good advice. Quick round of questions. These are just kind of quick answers, but we have a lot of guests who've had a lot of different forms of success. And something that's caused us to ask is, hey, success isn't quite universal in its definition. I'm kind of curious for you how you define success and how you know when you've achieved it.
Well, it's a corollary question deeply related to, deep joy, which my deep joy is helping others find and fully express their deep joy. So understandably, my definition of success is the extent to which I've been able to help them understand they are all leading, because leadership is worthless because it's just what you say. And anybody can say anything. But leading is priceless because it's what you do all day, every day. And are you, in the course of what you do all day, every day, consistent to your deep joy? That, to me, is success.
The last thing I guess I love asking would be, there's a young man somewhere in the state of Indiana, thought he was going to be a professional football player. If you went through a portal in time and happened to bump into this young man, what advice might you have given yourself in that stage of life if you had the opportunity?
Well, the first thing I'd probably say, because I couldn't restrain myself, would be, "Are you out of your mind?" But when I was 11, I was on an all-star baseball team, Meadowbrook Little League, and ended up winning the city title, which in effect was the county title, the regional title at that time. It was a big deal. We had two things that happened to us as a result of that. The first of which I thought was the best thing that could ever happen to a person in their life, which is they put us on the top of fire engines, sirens blazing, lights flashing, and drove us all around the town with people waving. And I thought, it just doesn't get any better than that. Just put me to sleep. This is not going to get any better. Well, it turned out I was wrong because we had a banquet. And at the banquet, a guy named Carl Erskine. Carl was from Anderson, Indiana, and he had played for the Brooklyn Dodgers and was the World Series strikeout record holder until Sandy Koufax broke it. And he said something I'll never, ever forget, which was, "Gentlemen, you can't do everything in life. No one can." But he paused for effect, and I can see him saying it and hear the tone in his voice. He said, "But any of you can do anything you choose to do." And I never forgot that, particularly when failure was looming, when, it was just like, okay, it can be done, and that's why I say, read to lead, curiosity, as you so correctly said, that ability to see, it can be done. It's always, Mandela said, it's always impossible until it's done. Mm-hmm. The one great Mandela line of many is being resentful about failing or being resentful towards others, blaming failure on others. He said, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it'll kill your enemies. Yeah, a shocker, doesn't work, kills you.
Yeah. This has been an amazing interview with a lot of good lessons, and you've managed to pack quite a few of those in the book that you've published as well. So where can folks go, Thom, just to track yourself and anything else that you have?
Sure. The book is Leadership is Worthless, but Leading is Priceless is available on Amazon and all major sites. If you enjoy it, then please leave a review. I'm told that helps. If you don't enjoy it, read it, reach out to me, because you can reach me at ThomMayerMD, so Thom Mayer MD, at gmail.com. If I can help you in any way, I will. If you need a phone call, we need a Zoom, happy to do that. My deep joy is helping others find their deep joy and fully express that. If there's anything I can do to be helpful in that regard, it would be an honor.
Right. And if they really, really enjoy your book, they can send you a bottle of Silver Oak.
Well played. Well played.
Really appreciate your time today. Lots of wisdom, and I picked a lot of good anecdotes as well. So appreciate that.
Thanks so much. It's been my honor entirely.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast, and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.
This is your host, Adam Outland. And outside of this podcast, I'm also the leader for a division of our company, Southwestern Consulting, and our division is the Southwestern Student Coaching Program. And that division we started back in 2020 because the desire we had was to take all these skills that we've equipped executives with. For over a decade, I've coached executives and managers and sales professionals on the skills, the habits, the motivation, and the systems to be successful in their job and in life. And what we realized from working with 30, 40, 50-year-olds was if we could have gotten to them when they were in ninth grade, in middle school, in high school, and equipped them with the same things we're teaching them now, the ripple effects would be huge. And so back in 2020, we decided to formulate a coaching program for youth, equipping youth with the same types of skill development that we typically work on with adults. We just apply it to their world. And what that looks like is teaching them the study skills, the communication skills that they can use every day in the classroom and outside the classroom. Coaching them on the mindset and the motivation of someone who's a top performer. And what does that mean? It means helping a young teenager create and craft a vision for themselves. because without a vision, we perish, but with a vision, we can be equipped with the motivation to dig into our study habits. We can see the connection between our future and the excellence that we have to form on our habits now to be successful in the long run. And we also work on the emotional intelligence. It's how we balance our emotions and manage those emotions when they come up in a way that allows us to communicate effectively with others and to communicate with ourselves. It's about equipping young people with self-talk. That means equipping them with the language that they can use to better direct their thoughts and their mind to accomplish their goals and their aims. And lastly, we equip them with the systems. That means for us, the tools, the time management, and the organization strategies to not just work hard in life, but to work smart. And when we combine all these different areas that we work with our teens on, what we find is that they form the habits early in life that allows them to achieve their goals later in life and even right now. And so our passion is to equip as many young people across this world as we can. And we're doing pretty good so far. We've got teens in 7 different countries who have been through our coaching program to date. We've worked with over 400 teens, and we would love to be able to serve you as well. Here's how it works. If you want to investigate coaching, we start with a parent consultation. That's a free call to discuss your student's particular needs and our program details. We work with Olympic athletes all the way down to teens that are just struggling to motivate themselves to do the daily work necessary in their class. So wherever your teen is, we'll meet them where they are and get them to the next level. And that starts with a parent consultation with you. A student planning session, that's the next step. If we agree that the value that coaching can bring matches your teen, then we will move to a student planning session. It's basically a free one-on-one coaching session with your teen. And that is designed to support them, but it's also designed to ask a lot of questions to help explore whether or not they want to be coached. Because at the end of the day, they ultimately have to be the one that pulls the trigger. And then after your student planning session, we get them paired with the right coach for them. We have an amazing staff of coaches from ex-Division I athletes, people who've come from the Ivy League system. We have coaches who have come from entrepreneurial backgrounds and acting backgrounds, so we can pair them with the right fit for them. And then once they partner with their coach, they'll benefit from 2 coaching sessions a month to really zone in on their personal growth and their skill development. So if you're ready to give your student the tools they need to be successful, click the link in the show notes for more information and to make sure you can schedule your free parent consultation today.